Michael Hemsworth, so good to have you on. I have followed your journey and I am super impressed with some things that I'm going to highlight here just to get us started. You started teaching piano at age 16. That's unusually young. That's unusually young. I totally want to hear more about that. But you earned your bachelor in music from UC Davis before you were 19. Like, that's again super impressive. You obviously were super motivated with music. You founded your music school, New Song School of Music, in 2003. So you've been in this industry a long time. Um, you started out with 20 students teaching in a duplex,
Mhm.
and you scaled that to multiple locations, commercial spaces in the just in the California area, which is, by the way, a very competitive marketplace. There's a lot of music schools in California. You've launched you call it the Music Bus. Am I saying that right?
Mhm.
Music Bus,
Yeah.
where you're doing music lessons, like mobile music lessons. You have a performance hall that you've built, 16 teaching spaces, and you're super involved in your community, which I love. And I also want to hear lots about that. You survived COVID, which not a lot of people can say that they did. So you survived COVID. Not only that, you thrived during COVID.
Mhm.
You're an author. Like, you've authored books, Mr. Michael's Music Maker Manual.
Mhm.
I love that. You've authored A Parent's Guide to Growing Creative Children. You're a blogger. You've been on podcasts. So, like, you're very active in this industry, and you've done an incredible job, like, launching, running, scaling your music school. And so I'm so happy to have you on here and just kind of like learn a little bit more about, like, first off, who you are, but also how in the world do you do all these different things. Can you start off with just telling me a little bit about, like, how did you even get started in music? Like, how old were you? What was that like?
So I started taking piano lessons probably about 11, 12. So we got a piano in our house. I was probably about fourth grade. So I actually was not, the 5-year-old prodigy that was in lessons right from the very beginning. I was the only one of my siblings that formally studied music at all. And the way I got started was actually kind of untraditional as well too. I mean, I didn't grow up in a family that was particularly well off, and so my dad, who was a small business owner, just a solopreneur, was at a business networking lunch and ran into a woman that had been friends with my aunt 40 or 50 years in a whole nother part of California. And she at that point was a piano teacher. And he worked out essentially a barter trade situation. And that's how I ended up taking piano lessons. And I stayed with her all the way up until college. She was my first job. I taught at her small school when I was a 16-year-old there as well too, and then I went from there.
So so she obviously was an inspiration to you,
Mhm.
like, because you didn't just take lessons, you actually took it then and started
I
teaching.
worked for her, yeah.
Yeah, and for her, so what was she like?
It was somebody I think that just recognized some of the things that was innate, some of my innate talents, and I gelled well, in terms of her teaching style as well too. I talk about this a lot, understanding the different pathways. I'm a highly visual learner, so I kind of fit well into the classical traditional mold, and that was really her specialty as well too. But I also appreciated that, even back in the late 90s, she had an appreciation for sort of that creative, um, some of the use of technology. She was early on really liked some of the clavinova features and the MIDI discs when they were still on floppy drives, and embracing some of the using the old school values and also using some new tools as well.
Yeah, so then you started teaching at 16. Were you using a lot of her tools and strategies at that point?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very experimental phase, really. I actually taught in small group classes early on in her school, which was kind of more of the lab style small groups. So I had actually grown up in private lessons with her, but that was a format that she was expanding into. And so I really got to see a lot of the like pros and cons of the private and group dynamic, which is of course, big within our industry at all from 16, and from a very practical standpoint, like what what do I love about teaching in a small group? What is a challenge? Where, and so I developed my philosophies around those pretty early as well too, because I was deep in both formats.
So at what point did you transition into college? Because I mean, because I was also a very you were very young
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well.
So I went through community college when I was young. I transferred to UC Davis. I still lived at home, so I actually worked with her school all the way through my college career as well too. I was 18 when I finished. Shortly thereafter, I got engaged. I got married. At the age of 20, we had our first baby, and it's when I started my school as well too. So New Songs and my first child are the same age and have grown up together. And now
I
she
love
runs one
it.
of the locations, so it's it's going well from that standpoint there. So I got to that crossroads really as kind of a newly married and then soon to be parent as well too, where I knew what I not only wanted to do, but like what I was essentially gifted to do as well too. That like teaching music and in this context, not in like the public education sector, was what I knew I could do to make the biggest impact really in the world. But it wasn't a real job, like even where I was working there, it was part-time, and like part-time less than 20 hours sort of stuff. And so as you start to consider the grow up phase, there's a lot to consider from that standpoint as well too. So that really became part of my philosophy as well too, even as a 20-year-old launching out on my own. I pretty much always wanted to have a not just a job for me, but a school context that had a job for the future me's, that here where I sit, that when I have a 20 something that has similar gifts and talents, can they work full time here, or can this be their only job? Can this be something stable enough that like I've had people that work here with me for 8 or 9 or 10 years, and I think that's a really big accomplishment, because that is for the good of the students, that's the good of the teachers as well. So that's always been really important, because that's what I needed then, and so that's what I wanted to make.
So at some point when you were at UC Davis, you decided you really wanted to be a career musician, but not, obviously like you said, teaching. It's a tricky industry, I think, for teachers. I've had many conversations with teachers over the years where it's like they want to teach more,
Mhm.
right? But there's only so much capacity that we had to give them. Um, and so at some point you made the switch, right? Like from because you started out as a teacher, that was kind of what you were doing, that was your craft. And then at some point you made that switch to being, okay, if I'm going to do this full time, or if I'm going to make this a career, I'm going to have to be an owner, right?
In a sense, I actually think that I made the switch to owner because of the impact that I wanted. Obviously,
Mm.
working at a larger scale has other, has different benefits and whatnot as well too. But I actually tell people, like if I'm doing my job right now, like I don't actually want to be the CEO of this forever. Like I want to build all the structures in place, and then you will find me, like back with the 5-year-olds and the egg shakers, teaching early childhood music, and back with the piano kids coaching. Like I am a teacher, and so I am temporarily, less teacher and more business leader. But if I do it right, I'm steering myself back to the teaching career. And not everybody's like that, but that's who I know I am.
Oh, that's cool. That's actually really I mean, the fact that you know that, I think says a lot about your, being pretty self-aware, right? Because I think that that's something, especially as a business owner, sometimes like we have to wear so many different hats.
Mhm.
Sometimes I think we get a little lost as to like what our main hat
Yeah.
is, right? And so for you, you're viewing this as kind of like a way to get to the next stage, but ultimately you really are a teacher.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. This
Yeah.
is
So like
this is my,
if
this
if
is
you
my leverage in order to be able to make this available to a lot of kids. Like I as a teacher can never like help 1,000 kids. So that's my leverage there. And it's my leverage to be able to build it in such a way where, like my family's supported, and then I'm gonna go teach little kids, whether or not that is, like the most lucrative opportunity for me. That's what I'm gonna have the privilege of being able to do at that point.
Well, and it's your passion.
It is.
Like it obviously brings you life and joy and peace, which we're all chasing after that. So it's the fact that you, like I say, the fact that you know that that's really cool. So you still like you teach in your school right now.
I do.
Okay. How many like how many hours a week would you say you're currently teaching?
I don't know. It varies a lot. I mean, like I'll insert myself a lot to start new things. So in the past 12 months, I've had a really heavy focus on early childhood music, both in things like um, what I call junior piano, as well as general music skills. Um, Also, similarly in our school outreach program, things that we're doing, things like our general music on a public school campus as well. So it it will vary. I mean, like there was a season last year that I was on campus with kinder, first and second graders every day. So I mean, that was probably 20 or 25 hours a week. I probably teach at least 3 to 4 afternoons a week now too, at least in
Wow.
some capacity.
So when you launched new songs,
Mhm.
um, you were you were in the home in the house.
Mhm. Yeah, so I mean,
Okay.
actually, I started with three. Like I can remember my first summer where I wrangled up three kids, and two of them were siblings for like my very first program, sort of thing. 20 was about the cap of what I ever taught as in like an in-home studio before we moved into our first commercial space.
Okay. So you actually grew it to 20
Right.
in the house and then you moved out.
Yeah, I mean,
Gotcha.
literally
Okay.
started from scratch. I worked as a substitute teacher by day, piano teacher by night, and
That's awesome. That's awesome. So okay, so you went from so you started in the house. How long were you in the house?
so let's see, 2003 to 2007.
Okay. So for a while
Yeah,
then you were kind of in that in between.
yeah.
Did you know like at the beginning, like at the very beginning, did you know you wanted to, you know, eventually get into a commercial space and grow it?
I did. So I mean, like I can look back and I had, like elementary business plans and things like that. I mean, but remember, I was like literally a 21-year-old at that point as well too. So there was I was also in a cult at the time, so that's a whole nother story. That was a really interesting phase in my life as well too. I left at 20.
Oh my gosh. What? Like I have some experience
Mhm.
in this type of world. I had about I would say about 2 years in a church that we went to that was very cult like. I don't think I would classify it as a full blown cult, but
Ours might have
very cult like.
way, but I don't mind being dramatic. So
Well, I say that, yeah, but I mean I think there are like legit. I mean it's definitely out there for sure. And so that part of that might be my morbid curiosity about this, like, what, you too?
we watch a lot of cult documentaries because we're like, it's a crazy experience because when you watch from the outside, you can do two things at one time. You can look and be like, "Wow, that is unbelievable," and at the same time say, "Oh yeah, that is a lot like what happened to me."
Well, what's amazing is that, like, you're watching it and you're thinking, how could somebody stay in that, right?
Hmm.
But then it's like when you're in that situation, it's so like it's so like you get so confused.
Hmm.
There's a lot of fear.
Hmm.
Your whole network of community and friends and all of that, and sometimes family,
Hmm.
are like all intertwined. And so it's not so simple to just be like, oh, I don't like what they're doing, I'm gonna leave. There's a lot that's like entrenched in that. And so it becomes very confusing and very scary to know what to do because you feel crazy
Right.
in a way, right?
Right. Absolutely. Because in that cult environment, there's a reason for everything. And so you especially, I mean, like I literally went through my entire formative years in this environment, so it was the norm for me. And I actually am grateful in a sense that this intense experience happened in the phase that it did. That by the time, my our first child was maybe 4. By the time we left, we literally like had our second child and left like in the same 48-hour period. So that was an intense week, let's just put it that way.
Oh my
um,
goodness.
so there's a lot of other damage that can happen in that situation. The relation, we still have a wonderful relationship with all of our parents, and we still have an excellent relationship with all of our children, and minimize the damage that could have happened in that environment. And so, yes, did I file for bankruptcy when I was 26 after coming out of a cult? Yes, but like 26 is a reasonable age for me to be able to go through that chaos and come out the other side and rebuild. So, some people are like, my 20s were wild because I was partying a lot. And mine was like, well, I was in a cult and running a small business and went filed for bankruptcy after the pastor, like took all the money from my foreclosure house. We all have
Well,
wild 20s. They're just different.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Let's rewind just a little bit. You were talking about your wife and her involvement in the school, kind of
Yeah.
how that worked.
Yeah. So my wife also has been a full-time homeschool mom. I mean, has been in charge of our 3 kids and does a fantastic job with that. But I would consider her in many ways like the community manager here. So that is a flexible role where she can really just be aware of what it takes to develop that sense of community, whether it's hospitality or, very much an idea person. So even if she's not in studio, like teaching lessons, she's really aware of the journey and brings a different perspective. Yeah, I think it's really valuable for me to have, you know, that other person to talk through what are the next steps, what the because we try a lot of things, and I think we probably try more things than most. We do say yes to a lot of things, but also be able to talk through and edit the ideas and not try literally all of them. So we just redid our lobby. We have that yes quality that we thought, okay, 3 weeks ago, I think our lobby could be more open, so let's redo it. So then 2 weeks later, we're pushing all the front desk stuff into the back of the building for the week, doing lessons while they're cutting holes in the walls, painting over the weekend. I'm literally showing up Monday morning to like hang the decorations and be like, okay, let's turn this around so in a week, which is not reasonable at all, but we don't always do things because they're reasonable. And she was definitely the design motivation behind all of that, to create a space that feels more welcoming and conducive to our families, where people want. Because we've long said, we started this in our little duplex and then our first house. And, like people came to our house to take piano lessons from the inception. And that there's a portion of that even if there's 1,000 kids, we don't want to lose. So yes, it's not literally my house anymore, but I do want you to feel, to an extent, that you get to come to my house when you come to this school.
I love that.
So
Yeah. Yeah. So she really helps. It sounds like she really helps with making things feel like the atmosphere, right? Like
right.
when people walk in, the experience that they get when they encounter the lobby. Uh, I'm guessing the studios too. Like,
Hmm.
did she design those?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's a Gallup program called Strengths Finder, which we've done years and
Hmm.
years ago, and one of the ones on that list is called Includer, and that is, there's also one called Woo, Winning Others Over. She has that one too, but Includer has always been, it's like you can joke, you're like, well, yes, of course, you're an includer. Like you've never met a person that you didn't want to like come in and be a part of our family. I mean, literally, it's not just at work. She does that at work. She does that at home too. Like literally, we'll have people like, okay, come and live at our house until you're back on your feet. Like that kind of includer mentality. It happens in all of those ways, but that definitely, I think, impacts what we are as a school, in an inclusive environment. That's not just like a buzzword. That is that's a core value.
So, I my wife worked quite a bit with me in the schools when we owned them, and it was kind of, she sort of came in and out of the business
Mhm.
based on seasons of life.
Sure.
We had some very colorful conversations when it came to like more stressful seasons, and I mean, it was great because she added an amazing element to the school that I couldn't add, kind of
Hmm.
like what you're saying, with your wife. But it wasn't always like harmonious, I should
Sure.
say, with us, because sometimes what we learned over the years is that it was best if we stay in our own lane,
Sure.
right? So for her, she was very good at communication. So like strength finders, we did the same thing. Communication is like either one or two for her.
Hmm.
She's a very good communicator. And whereas for me, like fast start, you know you know but anyway, so we had different strengths, right? And the point is like being in our own lane, we learned that it's like okay for me not to have the same strength as her,
Absolutely.
and vice versa. And instead of like arguing over that or sometimes tripping over each other, it's like okay, I can respect the fact that this is really your lane, and and we can be okay with that moving forward. Did you guys have anything like that?
Yeah, I would say that we did not necessarily have a lot of intensity to that. I think that comes from, again, that sort of yes mentality. And I think it would have been very fair at some point for her to like stress out and be like, there's not enough money in this business. What the heck are you doing? And she would not tend to be that person. She was kind of like, it'll all work out sort of mentality. So I think that diffused some of what can be very normal and reasonable stress. I mean, because money is a big issue in small businesses, and I would not say that we are responsible, like fiscally responsible folks here. We have always been pursuing a dream. And we've always been pursuing a dream with our life and with our school. And we've not waited for things to like logically line up. And like I was not saving retirement money in my 20s, or like it, these things that we've always stretched a little bit and believed that we'll get there when we get there. And also that we're alive right now. So we're people laugh, we're known for having Disneyland season passes, because it's like, I mean, our kids are our kids for only one time. And there could be a logical argument that that's not the responsible thing to do right now. And I'm not going to tell anybody that my way is right and their way is wrong. I mean, but for us, all we have is right now. So we are going to like fully lean into go to Disneyland with our kids and pursue a small business that doesn't make sense, and like do all the things with a sense of sort of blind confidence that it's going to work out in the end. And but in that, we've really been true to ourselves. Like we've also not been lying and saying, oh, like I say I think it's all going to work out, but I really don't. But, we've, I think, learned to be very genuinely ourselves and not live by somebody else's standard or picture, but just say this is us, this is what we believe, and this is what we're going to do. And lean into that, as much as we can. So it's interesting to talk about like school owner journeys sometimes, because I can't imagine anybody else's journey looking like just like mine, because they're not me. And my journey has really been, hopefully, a sense of being genuinely committed to my own journey, like my own calling, my own voice. And so if you could maybe take that part away from it, but you couldn't like do exactly what I did, because that was me trying to be genuinely myself. That was my wife trying to be genuinely herself, for us to raise a family that was true to our own values at the time. Not trying to check the boxes for like this is what a successful school is going to look like. This school just looks like us, not like the perfect school.
I love that. Yeah, it's like an outpouring of who you are.
Hmm.
So there really is no other school exactly like yours, and that's the way it should be.
Right.
right? Instead of trying to carbon copy somebody else. You said something really interesting earlier. You talked about strength finders.
Hmm.
I think this is something especially if you're running this business with your spouse or even a business partner, or just somebody else. Like, I think that this is so important. And even beyond that, like for your leadership team,
Hmm.
what caused you guys to explore that?
A strengths finder was from the cult, actually. So thank you
Okay.
to that season. You know, good and bad things all happen at the same time. So that's where we started with that one. But I am a huge nerd for anything in this vein. To some degree, the Myers Briggs personalities, not my favorite, but I'll definitely look them up there. Recently, the 6 types of working geniuses. We've done this with our leadership team. It's a big joke to me. Like, do you see how many people don't have tenacity on this team? Hug the tenacity people because they are the only people keeping this ship together right now. So give them a high five. We love all of our wonder and our encouragement people, but these guys, we need these. If these guys leave, we are doomed. So, if for people that are not familiar with it, there's those 6 types of working geniuses. I think it's a great profile. Mine tend to be high in invention and encouragement. I think, which is really that teacher personality for me, and then being an idea person. Enneagrams. I'm a huge Enneagram nerd to the point where I annoy people. I'm watching TV shows. I'm like, that is a 6 right there. So any Enneagram fans out there, I'm a 3-4. I would have said if I
Okay.
was a 3 with a 4 wing. Some days I think I might be a 4 with a 3 wing. So I'm really, there's a little existential crisis there for me between the 3s and the 4s, but they're definitely both there. My wife is a classic 7, all the way. So we
That
we
makes
also
sense.
do recognize these things about ourselves. Like I in no way expect my wife or my leadership team or anything else to think just the way that I do. I know that they're not going to, and hopefully, obviously we can meet in the middle and we can create agreements there. But I come in with a fundamental understanding that you're not going to think like me.
I like that. So, okay, so yeah, I love this topic, by the way. I'm an Enneagram geek too. So many conversations. In fact, we've had friends come over just to sit in a circle so we could talk about Enneagram. Like, so it's crazy. It's amazing how deep that concept is. But so I'm a 7-8. Um, but when you said your wife was 7, that makes sense, that she's jumping on board. She's excited for the adventure. She's, all the new stuff. So totally makes sense. That's awesome. So, okay. So that's really cool. So you guys have done a lot of good work in understanding uh, that you're different, basically. I mean, I think if you could walk away with anything when it comes to those personality things and those strengths, it's just understanding that there are different strengths and people, they're just simply wired differently. And that's okay. In fact, it makes you stronger when you embrace it and you allow somebody to really exercise their strength, and you don't have to be threatened by it. You don't have to whatever. It's just that's who they are, and empowering them to do that. And so when we kind of unlocked that, it took time for us to unlock that. But one of the books that was really helpful, I don't know if you've heard of it, is it's called Rocket Fuel, and he talks about visionaries and integrators, and there's a little test you can take in the book. And that was a really helpful book to sort of identify that there are some people that just are not visionaries. That's not their, it's not the way they're wired. It's not the way they think. They think about how to like make things work. Like, just tell them the vision and give it to them, and then they can, it's kind of like the enabler in the 6 working geniuses, right? Like, it's a person, they don't want to come up with the ideas, they just want to put it into motion. Enablement and tenacity is like, we have to have that, because those are the people that really make the engine run. The visionaries are like off to the next thing that they can come up with. But every organization has to have has to have each of those sort of at or near the top of the organization, because that, and there's a natural friction that happens there, which is a good thing. Um, Great example of that would be Walt Disney and Roy Disney, right? You talked about Disney. I'm also, my wife and I are huge fans of Disney. But Walt was like the classic visionary, right? He was like the classic, like the world could be a better place, just looking at things. But he sort of was, not exactly connected to reality financially with the company. And so Roy, his brother, was the classic integrator. And so, and even in the book, they talk about that. So anyway, just really interesting. And it's one of those things that, I mean, we could go on and on about that. It sounds like, because I think we're in the same frame of mind with that. But it's just cool that you guys found that so soon.
Mhm.
And like you said, I mean, maybe it came from a kind of a toxic place like the cult, but that's actually that's a good thing to learn, you
Yeah.
know, that those strengths. But I'd be curious, what would you say has changed from your perspective, like when you were first getting started as, out of the house and then moving to the commercial location? You obviously had an idea of what success looked like to you,
Mhm.
right? Has that changed at all? And if so, how?
That's a really interesting question. I would say in many ways it has not. I mean, success for me is really wrapped up, directly in the lesson experience. It is for me like still looking through the window and seeing the human interaction and the growth that happens child by child. And so that's still that's still very much the part where I walk, like where I just walk through the halls and measure that experience, that kind of growth happening. So I'd say if anything has changed for me over the years, it's understanding how to maybe say balance idealism and not cynicism, but I would say that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there's a sense that I hire a teacher and I believe in them, and which is true. But if it's struggling, then I just feel like I can fix it. Like I can do this thing and I can make it better. And we're all in this family together, and we're family for life, and we're all going to make it to the end together. And I think that there's a little bit of reality too, especially as we scale up, it that not everybody is on that full journey. They might just be on a different journey, and that's okay. There's going to be different phases as well too. Kind of that saying, what got you here won't get you there, or something to that
Right.
effect. As we grow, like you might have an administrative person that does mature and become a really great manager, but then maybe they're not then going to then go on and become the next director. There's a good feeling to think that the same people are going to take the whole journey with me together the whole time. Like there's a nostalgia that you want there. And I think we definitely should be giving people all those opportunities to grow. But I would say also, I've had to learn that not everybody is going to take the whole journey with you. And if the season has passed or the time has passed and say this is not no longer really working effectively, you have to make some changes there as well too. Like I never have ever wanted to like let somebody go, but there is a certain point when you can't just hang on to everything forever. You have to look at it with a degree of reality and say, okay, if there's more for us to grow with, and that's not just where you're at right now, then I need to let you move on to the next phase in your development, and we need to go this direction. But we can't just kind of hold on to everything and not identify problems as they arise. You definitely give people the opportunity to change and grow and coach them, but if you've been coaching and you've been doing it and it's not working, I think we want to run our business like a family, and in many ways we do, but it's also not literally like a family. They can't all literally be my kids, and so
Yeah.
I guess that has changed a little bit. Um, I'm still happy to say that it's still more like a family than not. I still believe that as well too. But there's a level of wisdom that I have to exert as well too.
Can you think of a time when when that kind of, you were faced with that, like maybe it was a teacher, maybe it was a staff member, where it was kind of, either you had to let them go or you had to meet with them and they were not performing with the priorities, like you mentioned, that you were hoping that they would have, where kind of that reality started to to hit you, where it's like, oh, maybe not everybody has the same, eternal optimism that we have as as owners. Like, can you think of a time when that really hit you?
I think especially as we grow and there's a lot of ideas, you start to see where people are having a hard time getting on board with new ideas. Um, our system of taking lesson notes and parent communication has been a big portion of the past couple of years. That we have kind of a specific way that we want to encourage parent communication. In both ways, and for some teachers that's just not doesn't feel natural to them. Like their method is I write a sticky note. It's like, well, that's great, but then when you're out sick, like we don't have your sticky note, and like
Right.
that really is that's really a problem for us. And so, or or I just have kind of my vibe that I do. And again, like, okay, well, maybe you do, but then a parent doesn't know like what your vibe is. And so if they come and ask me as a director, like, what has my kid learned in the past 6 months, I I can't explain the vibe there. So there are things that I know that teachers like balk against, but there comes a certain time that, okay, we we've explained the value and we've explained how to do it, and the general consensus is moving ahead. And if you really just don't want, like, if you're just adamant that, like, well, I just do me, and like everybody else is, okay, that's cool that you do practice things where like they take challenges, and the gnome is gonna like earn points for you if you do that, like, well, that's fine, but like I'm too cool for that. Or like, well, I just like I don't like coming out to the lobby to find students. I need to just send them out my, like, and they just have this number of things that is like, well, okay, but I'm not going to do that. That at some point that works against our community values, that we're this is not just about you, this is about us as a school, and most of all it's about our students. And if this is something we recognize as the best practice, there's a level of humility that we have to say, okay, I can participate in what the school is doing, even if it's not my personal vibe. And there, to a certain level, that's necessary, because we want to function together. And so it's going to break down if everybody is like, leave me alone. I'm just going to do my own thing. There's other places that works great. Like that's cool. There's other schools where it's like everybody has their own kind of private practice, and you do your thing in your room, and I do my thing in my room, and like it doesn't matter. But here we have a community way of doing it, that I tell all of the parents that this is what we're going to offer, and this is the way we do our makeup lessons. And no, you can't. Well, everybody else does makeup lessons this way, but I do it different. I'm sorry, we can't do that. And so those are instances where you have a meeting, you have another meeting, and it's just not sinking in that we want you to be a part of the community, and not just, well, I don't do it that way. And um, and it's tough because these are not evil people that are devoid of
Right.
skills. They're good teachers, and so it takes bravery to say, okay, we're not on the same path right now, and I need to let you go have your path, and I'm going to have my path. That's scary to admit and to commit to. But I would say over the years, I'm more ready to do it than I would have been in the past.
Yeah. Well, and I think every music school owner that's listening to this right now can 100% relate to what you're saying. And so I guess the follow up question is, how do you actually deal with it? Right. So you've got somebody, you've explained it to them, you've reminded them, they just simply don't align with your way of doing things at your school. Is it just like okay, fine, let's separate, let's go separate ways? Do you meet with them? Do you try to reason with them? Like, how do you take the point to where it's basically like, okay, we're just going to have to separate ways? Do you like,
Yeah.
what's your process for that?
I think it's twofold. One, I have really try and cultivate something that I call radical. Well, not I call that's radical candor. There's a book called Radical Candor. It's one
Yeah.
of the chapters in one of my favorite books, 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. Yeah, I believe in this conceptually. So um, I've worked pretty hard to make sure that that is a value of our school. To like, I'm just going to come out and say it to you. And I've had to practice this a lot. My wife has been a great asset in this as well too, because I am the teacher. Like that is who I am. So she's like, so she's told me like, you know, you're always trying to kind of lead people on a journey. She said, and sometimes you have to be the boss and just say, this is the way that it is. And I've had to learn that a lot as well too, that, you know, like I know that I am very much the teacher, but I can't always put my teacher hat on it, and actually be the boss. Sometimes I just have to call it like it is, and I am the boss in this situation, and I have to talk to you plainly as the boss. So that's a portion. I think another big portion has to do with the team development. Um, I am at this page, and size helps with this as an organization. You know, like if you have 3 people on your staff, there's not exactly a lot of space to also be like developing the fourth person, you know, like that that you don't like need yet. Our size, that makes it easier, but that's a big portion of it as well too, is that I'm interviewing people when we don't actively need new teachers. I'm working on coaching people in new programs that they don't currently teach. And you know, like I'm coaching 3 or 4 people right now in a program that only 1 or 2 of them will probably teach next year, because I don't know who's going to end up being really strong at it. And sometimes I'm surprised. You know, sometimes the person with less experience and the great attitude ends up surpassing the person with more knowledge and charisma but less teachability. And so I can't it's really tough to guess at the beginning and then just always be right. so taking the time to interview more people, hire more people, develop more people, so that there's a roster of high performing people that are ready to do that, because we end up leading from a place of fear so much, you know, that, oh, this person's not doing well, but if I fire them, I'm stuck. And so we cut
Yeah.
ourselves off at the knees from accomplishing the vision, because we're always in the, leading from this place of fear. And by being willing to develop new people, everybody can see, like, wow, he just got hired 3 weeks ago, but his schedule's full now, and he gets called out at staff meetings because his parent notes are all good, and we know that we can call on him as a substitute teacher, and he responds to messages, and people can see, oh, wow, other people are surpassing me in a sense as well too, so that we're not limited in, well, there's nothing else I can do in this situation. Does that
Yeah.
answer the question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love so much of what you said there. Like just this idea of having a constant flow of new hires and interviewing and looking for new people, that it keeps you from feeling panicked. Like, hey, I have this person that just simply has got to go.
Right.
And so because you're always thinking that in the back of your mind, right? Like, well, this person's got to go, but they've got 15 students. What are we going to do with those 15 students? Like, we got to pivot them with somebody else. And if the new person can't work the same days, and it's like there's so many things that go on in the back of your head. But the reality is, the best thing for the business is that they leave because they aren't aligned with the values and the vision for the business. And so you have to make that decision and at the same time bring somebody else in. And yeah, so that's such a tough, it's a tough reality of our business,
Right.
especially as you grow.
I mean, we're teachers because we see the potential in every single person. I see the potential in every single person. And so having to also say, I see your potential, but also for the past 6 months, you have not exercised that potential. That's actually like very hard on my teacher heart to want to do, and I say all this also knowing that we are very committed to long-term relationships with our teachers. Don't be confused and think that, like, we're just trying to churn through people. I've had people that have worked with me almost 10 years, and
Yeah.
that's important to me. Also, I think that's relevant because sometimes I'm looking at a person and thinking, I can't see you being here for the next 10 years. So maybe that's telling me something. And I don't want to pass by a person that could be here for 10 years doing a great job. I don't want to stop looking for them just because I'm just comfortable with what's happening right now. I want to keep looking and have all-star people, all long-term people, all, people that are deeply entrenched in our school and be proactive about what our team is and how they act, not reactive.
When you look back over the years, were there were there certain decisions that because of those decisions it unlocked more growth, allowed you to scale to the point to where you are? Were there some key decisions that you can kind of think back on, um, kind of along the way that helped unlock that?
Hmm. It's an interesting question. I mean, undoubtedly, some of our growth was sticking in it long enough and then making the most of the opportunity. So, I mean, we had a little over 400 students before things started to shut down in 2020. And by late spring of 2021, we actually had 500 students. Um,
Wow.
so there was this rebound that happened, um, that we kind of rode that wave in 2021. It kind of made me sad because like it feels once that wave happens, you feel like, oh, this wave is just going to go forever, and that's also not really true. Like it was a specific season, and it was we grew almost despite ourselves. Um, and not every year, not every season is going to be like that. But I also believe that we got to experience that spike because we were so in it. Like when things started to shut down, we turned around and we had everybody on Zoom like within 7 days, and we kept all of our staff. I mean, like we didn't let anybody go during 2020. Apart from their own life changes. They got married and moved on to something else or whatever. Once things started to open, like we would have Zoom lessons, and then also I would come in and set up tents in the middle of the summer in the back parking lot and bring the digital pianos out. So it's like, if you
Wow.
want to take piano lessons, but you really are like not digging the Zoom thing anymore, then you can come and you can sign up for an outdoor lesson, but we're only doing them in the morning because it's summertime, so it's going to be too hot. So, like our outdoor lessons are available from like 9 to 1, and then we shut all that down, and then the afternoon ones are on Zoom. And like we just we rolled with it and said, okay, what have we got to work with today? What's the best we can do in this? Like, okay, we're going to
Wow.
reopen the building, but we're going to redirect like you can only come in through the front door and out through the back door. So there's like arrows on all the hallways so that you don't pass anyone in the hallway. Like you can only, everything flows one way, and there's, tape lines. This is the teacher side and this is the student side. And you like, we did all the things to,
Yeah.
say, well, we opened and then shut back down again because California restrictions changed. I called all the parents and said, this is what we're doing next, this is what we're doing next. You stay in it and you don't give up.
Yeah.
and
Oh,
then
that's
and then when the environment is conducive to then growing, you're there and you're ready. And I think that happens personally too. Like I personally kept growing and maturing as a leader through being in a cult and through through all of the things that were good and bad, and that helped me to also be personally ready for whatever was going to come next.
wow. I love that. Yeah, and the COVID thing was just wild, right? There's so many wild stories of different things people were doing. One of the things I found interesting for our school, at least during COVID, is that we made certain changes to our processes and even our makeup lesson policy. We changed because of COVID. And then once things started to kind of come back to normal, we didn't change, we didn't revert back. There were certain things. So were there things for you after COVID that you actually, you know, you didn't change back. You kept doing policies or different ways that you were running your business because of COVID.
There are definitely changes. I don't know how many of them I attribute specifically to COVID, because also simultaneously with that reopening was so much scaling. So in early 2022, we opened our second location. So other things were started to be different too, like running a multi-campus school and things like that. So some of those I think were realities based on our size, um, not specifically just based around those shutdowns itself. I mean, some things like having Zoom makeup lessons if people are sick, of course, still stick around just because we know that we can. We made a very intentional choice not to kind of pursue the online market, so to speak, that we were going to use that as a tool, but that we were and always would be a local music school. And so we wanted to cultivate the in-person relationships and have the in-person experiences available as quickly as we could. So we did not get distracted by, and also let's build out an online school format. We never made a subscription course with a library of videos, and like, not that those things are bad things, but there I also saw a lot of people kind of in the zigzag. A lot of people zig the same way, and I
Right.
think we kind of zagged and said, okay, no, we're not, like, we're using the online space, but we're not changing our identity to an online space. We are maintaining our identity as an in-person and local space.
Well, and people wanted to come back.
Hmm.
That was the thing. It's not like people wanted to stay online,
Right.
and it's not like there was a demand for that. The only reason it was a forced demand
Correct.
to get people onto Zoom. But yeah, I think for us that was really the big thing was Zoom became relevant at
Hmm.
that point. Whereas before it was kind of this thing that some people did and most people didn't really know how it worked. But after COVID, Zoom became like a normal part of life, and so
Sure.
we did integrate that, and it sounds like you guys did as well, just in terms of like having another tool in the
Right.
toolbox
Exactly.
uh, with your school. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so you I mentioned earlier are an author,
Hmm.
um, and so you've written multiple books. What what was walk me through that a little bit? What was the impetus to writing a book and oh, perfect.
Here it
And what
is.
yeah. So walk us through that a little bit and tell us what the impact of that has been.
Yeah. So, so this book, I worked on end of 2024 and it was out by April of 2025. I will say in 2024 as well, um, got myself a virtual personal assistant. So I have a backup person, and so sometimes people ask, like, how did you get all this, that, and the other done? So I had help when it came to, like, okay, format the
Very smart.
pages and get it uploaded, and
Yep.
so just so that people know, that I have that, and it's been again just tremendous because it's a relationship thing. It takes there's an uptick. It takes time to build a rapport with somebody that can manage projects that are me and not just school basis. But shout out to Bo because it's definitely been significant for me. But why did I write it? I One of the goals I really looked at our music school, particularly as we were growing and working with a much bigger pool of people. Something that happens with bigger schools, I think somewhat universally, is the retention rate changes. When it was just me and I had my 20 kids and I taught at my house, it's like everybody sticks around forever. One student leaves and it's just like shocking. And and then you're in a larger school and you're like 80 people canceled lessons this month. Like, wow, that's like it blows my mind. And part of it is normal. And part of it I really wanted to get proactive on. And that some of that lies with our staff. What is the quality of the experiences that we are all offering? And then a part of it too is what I wanted to communicate with parents. Um, and so, like, I have an internal goal that students that start with us stay on for at least 18 months. Make it
Mm.
past some of the sets of hurdles and get a real relevant experience. Like, if you've only been here for 4 months and then you quit, I don't feel like you have really taken away a life experience that's giving you a lot of insight. At 18 months, it's not a magic number, but I feel like that's you've had to push past at least one or two of the major hurdles and,
Hmm.
experienced a little bit more like tangible success. But I talk with parents all the time that don't themselves feel empowered in this process. If you look at music education, in the past 40-ish years, I talk with parents that they themselves did not, in most cases, get a strong music education background. And so they feel kind of at a loss. Like, well, I generally feel like putting them in piano lessons like sounds good, but then then all of these other hindrances get in the way. Like if we're too busy with soccer, then we're just too busy. And I wanted to frame for them a little bit different perspective on what we're doing in music lessons that's not just hobby based. I really believe that fundamentally things like take learning a musical instrument is different than baseball practice.
Mm.
Maybe baseball's not the best example, but or sewing lessons or some horseback riding, something like that. Because I think that there's a developmental component to music, and that's part of why I've spent so much of my effort personally in the past couple of years in the early childhood music space as well too, is that music is not just a skill that we're trying to hand off to these kids. Like we're not starting with, okay, can't push the buttons, and then at the end of it can push the buttons. Like that's not the journey that we're on. And that I really do believe that there's so much brain development that is happening, as well as confidence development and ability to focus, fine tune listening. I mean, like I'm preaching to the choir here, but the list is really really extensive. And so part of my hope was to communicate to a parent like, okay, even if you're just in the preschool music class and we're just singing Baby Beluga and playing Egg Shakers, like it looks like we're just doing a recreational activity. But I actually truly believe that there are tons and tons and tons of things that we're building below the surface. And I want you as a parent, like I realize that you can't see it per se. You don't maybe know what's going on, but I want to communicate to you some of the value of what's happening there. And I also really wanted to empower parents to guide the journey somewhat because they know their kid. And I speak a lot from kind of the perspective of a piano player. Like I grew up playing the piano, went to college, have sort of the classical traditional piano model, firmly in my history. And as a teacher, I also found students that didn't respond to that particular context. Like you just signed up with a piano teacher and you started in your piano adventures book, and then they struggled. It felt like, well, then they're just not cut out for piano or something like that. And I actually really believe that there's so many other options. And some teachers are really great about being flexible and other teachers are not. But um, I tell parents all the time, like, yes, I know about music, but you know your child. And I want your insight. Like if you find that like they get demotivated by trying to read music on the staff, but they're an excellent memorizer, like I want to know that, and I want to use their strengths to help them with this process as well too. And so I think a lot of parents feeling like, oh, I'm not the expert here, would take a situation that maybe is not working and say, well, then that's just a reason to like stop music. And a big portion of this was me saying, no, like actually, there could just be another doorway here. And if you know that there's another doorway, then you can help get your child to another doorway. And so instead of turning into a situation where we tried music and like that we're just not musical or not artsy or whatever, we could actually get them in the doorway that's going to work for them and help them be successful.
Wow. Yeah, and like I say, preaching to the choir, because I think as music teachers, as music school owners, I think that we all desire our parents to be more on board,
Mhm.
right? I mean, ultimately, they're the ones paying for it most of the time, anyways. And so that affects things. We've even had, over the years, some students where they would, they parents would let us know that they're dropping, and then come to find out that the kid didn't even know, right? And so it's like we brought a meeting together, they worked it out, and it turned out it was just something between the mom and the child. And so we were able to work it out. But getting the parents on board, I think, is so smart. It's so smart, and kind of empowering them to understand what this process actually looks like. And also that it's not like, you know, immediate instant gratification with music. It's one of those, it's a lifelong process, but it's certainly a long-term play for them. And so I love this. I love that you are approaching it this way. The one of the benefits too of this, and I'd be curious if this has happened for you, but it really builds your credibility, right, as a school owner. Like you literally wrote the book on it, right? And so how do you utilize this book in your school?
Yeah. So it's early for us this year still, like it's not been out for that long, but it's definitely something that we give to people. They come in for a studio tour and we ask if they want one. We also, when we're out at like vendor style events, feature that as well too, be able to, here's a pamphlet about lessons, but also if you're interested, we can, I mostly just give away books, like I don't intend to really make money on this project at any point, because as you said, the idea about the credibility and the cohesiveness of our mission, even, like, um, I have a very distinct point of view. And so for all of our teachers and for all of our parents, I want to communicate like, this is what we are actually all about. And, like, if you want to be in a big rock show, like that's cool. But if I don't mount a big rock show, here's the reason why. Like here's my thoughts behind it. I definitely have also then started to visit podcasts and things like that, on our local news and whatnot as well. So we have a long history. So the word of mouth element is, not like this wild pivot where it's like, oh, nobody knew about us and then all of a sudden everybody's heard about it.
Yeah.
I have been pretty engaged in the community for a long time as well, so this is, further step in that process. But I think it was important to me as well too, because yes, I do want to speak with a level of credibility about what we're doing as a school, and that there's a difference. We do have a specific mission besides just give us money and we'll tell you about the guitar. Like, we do believe in something bigger, and I want you as a parent to know that. I want the teachers to know that as well too, to especially in a context like mine where I don't get to meet everybody anymore. I'm still very used to, even though it's been more than 5 years, I'm really used to knowing every child's name and every parent's name, and because they are the key element for me. And so I can't like actually meet them all anymore, but I do want to communicate something about myself and my values to all of them as well too. So that's
Mm.
as I look at, okay, what's the next 10 years look like? I want, you know my vision, like, just like I want this to be like coming into my house, coming into my living room. I want to communicate my goals for your child, even if I don't get to meet you face to face or work with them myself.
Yeah, and it sounds like it was a project that definitely comes from your passion, right? It comes from your heart, and I love that.
And I will
Um,
say this, it was a great challenge for me personally as well. I think it's always a great challenge to commit to what you think, like to actually take these general ideas and make them very concrete, kind of like they did about like writing a mission statement out. Like you have to really put some teeth behind it if you're going to write a mission statement for your school or for yourself or any of those things. So this was sort of an extended version of that. But it also was really great for me artistically, because it was that challenge of going through an artistic process. I'm not really an active performer other than stuff that we do from an educational outreach perspective. But I don't play concerts in that traditional sense. But writing for me was also that challenge of, here's something that I have to learn and communicate artistically. This is, like my first recital in a very real sense, like my first book. And so I also had to go through that creative process where I'm sitting here talking about, this is how I want to help other kids grow as creative people. It also made me grow as a creative person by having to go through all of the same steps and all of the same, is this good enough? Is this finished? Like, what else can I do to it? And to to be brave and walk through the process and practice what I preached.
Well, I think it's great, and I think the book is a fantastic idea. And like I said, it builds your credibility as a school. It empowers parents, and hopefully, it will like help your student retention, and you'll start to see the impact there. I'm sure it will. One of the things you talked about this a little bit earlier about teachers, like dealing with teachers and how to manage them. But you briefly talked about this creating flow of new teachers coming in the door, and that's something that I have heard over the years from a lot of school owners as a really big struggle. Like, how do you find teachers? Like, do you have like some secret wisdom here as far as like what are some of the ways that you guys find teachers, and you, like you said, you keep them for the long term, but how do you find them?
I mean, honestly, at this point, I just consider it a part of my job. When we were smaller, like teacher, like even just finding and interviewing teachers is not. It's just a necessity based on certain time periods. Oh, we have more students, and now I got to find somebody. It's like a temporary job, and I have now shifted it to that point in my thinking where it's just a permanent part of my job description. In the same way that, like the marketing plan is a part of my job, like I can't just think about the online ads in a crisis and then back away from them. It's an ongoing maintenance, and staffing is very much like advertising in that sense as well too. I use, like online platforms like Indeed. I don't like paying them money either, but it's a reality that it's more costly to not have new teachers apply than it is to, I don't spend tons of money. I don't constantly spend money, but I do realize I'm going to have to put some money into this process to get, you know, look at more resumes, talk to more people. Um, you know, don't take the first person that feels like that maybe kind of they could work, and keep talking to them. Keep resumes. I've reached back out to people that I interviewed 6 months ago and it wasn't a good fit, and I said I've got a new opportunity now. It's a part of my job. We do get, referrals from existing teachers. I have to keep track of those as well too, because the timing doesn't always match. And so if I get a referral and I don't have something right there, I got to hang on to that information and then go back and cultivate it later.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's amazing how when it comes to finding teachers, there's just I love how you said that. It's part of your job as the owner. It's just something that you're always thinking about, that there's always opportunity. You're looking for recruiting people, or like you said, Indeed, or old teachers returning. Like, it's not like there's one strategy. There has to be lots of different, just like with marketing, right? And so, yeah, no, that's very interesting. So over the years, one of the big challenges, I think, at least for me, and I think it's probably the case with most school owners, is finding like a good management software to like just to kind of manage everything. Like like at the very beginning for me, this dates me a little bit, but it was like I didn't even use software. Like it was literally just phone calls and writing names down or whatever, at the very, very beginning. But then, pretty quickly you realize, okay, we need some way to manage this. And I went through, I don't know, probably four or five over the
Right.
years. And the bigger you get, the harder it is to switch, right?
Hmm.
So what was that process like for you?
Well, we were years, many years on Google Calendar and QuickBooks, which sometimes surprises people how far we got with just those. But I
How
had,
far did you get?
I mean, like 400 students.
Wow. 400 students. You
Yeah,
had 400 students on Google Calendar.
and QuickBooks. Yeah, I know, I
Wow.
know. I look back and I
How
think,
did you do emails?
uh, through Gmail.
Wow.
I mean, um, I look back
But you
sometimes
did
and
it.
I think, well, that's what we were comfortable with. So yeah, every teacher had a Google Calendar where we managed their appointments, and then their invoices was in QuickBooks, and the the contact information was in QuickBooks. We weren't really texting at all at that point. So, um, yeah, and there's holes in that system. Like the appointments and the bills were not connected at all. So you
Mm.
could find, oh, look, this person for whatever reason hasn't had bills being generated for the past 5 months, and there was no like the manual review was the only way to catch those things. So sometimes it's shocking how far we got on the system that we did. Um, and so Opus was really our first big pivot. So I definitely was aware of different softwares and programs, and we were, I think, before even starting Opus, but similar time frame, we um, we started using a version of Go High Level, um, My Studio Success, that gave us more of the CRM functions. But yeah, I mean, like CRM is a whole nother thing. I mean, like during that time period, the main lead strategy was still post-it notes and three-ring binders. Like like that was the main lead category. So I distinctly remember years of in January, listing all of the current leads and all of their statuses by hand, you know,
Wow.
just not that long ago, really, considering. Um, so we had leaned into having contact information in that CRM system, which gave us, some more email and texting abilities there, and then putting our Opus, using to replace essentially Google Calendar and QuickBooks to get all of our stuff in there. And it was a big, it was a big summer to hop systems and to reprogram the appointments in and to reprogram the cards in, and it was not fun. But that is it is a necessary price at some point to in order to scale up, because if the old system is not going to be sustainable, it's going to take some work to get into the new system. So we did that. I think we probably were between 400 and 500 students at the time we took the jump there. So that's a lot of contact information to have to migrate. And I hired a high schooler, like for the summer as a data entry person to help out with that, in addition to like what all our normal operations people were doing. And we stuck it through, and it was worth it. And then over time, Opus added features, and I didn't adopt all of the new ones right away, because similar to Google Calendar and QuickBooks, like my other system was working okay. So I still at that point had a dual system going on too, where we had our CRM, and that's where we sent text messages and emails, and then we had Opus where we had all of other stuff there. But again, dual systems can be problematic, because you can lose things and transfer back and forth between them. So ultimately being able to consolidate even those CRM functions, and texting out of Opus and emailing out of Opus and things like that, ended up being just a game changer for us as the size of both our administrative and our student team grew. And fortunately, when we added some schools, two of the schools that we've added were existing schools that the owners needed to exit and had asked me about purchasing them. And they both were on Opus as well already. So we were able to migrate those into our same Opus account and have everybody in one master school database.
That's just amazing that you lasted to 400 students
I didn't know
on
any
Google
difference.
Calendar.
Seemed
That's
normal at the time.
yeah. Isn't that funny how like when we don't know any better, what we put ourselves through?
Yeah. I will say one of the things that was great about Opus, even in comparison to other things, there might have been one other software that I kind of dabbled with, but didn't bring everybody over into, like we spent a couple of years, not years, a couple of months beta testing, but the, the fewer clicks to get through things, was really a big thing for me. Not having dual systems where it's like we have to look up their appointment here and then go to another software and then look up their phone number, like all that kind of business. And then just being able to, it doesn't take 7 steps to move, from point A to point B. That it's really easy for things to get overly cluttered, where the directions for how to change somebody's lesson from Monday to Tuesday ends up taking like 6 or 7 steps. And so really finding something that had the lowest number of steps in most cases, I think was a big thing for me.
So, how do you approach marketing? Everyone has their own version of, or I guess, thoughts about how they get new students. Um, but you've got an amazing story, and you grew, and you can continue to grow. What's your approach? Like, how do you approach getting new students?
I think, in a very real sense, I want my approach to new students to be similar to meeting people. I just want to walk around and meet people and learn about them and talk about what I do, and legitimately form a human connection with them, and then serve them with something I really, really believe in. So, I mean, marketing is complicated. No, you know, no doubt about that. But trying to replicate marketing where you just go and meet people and talk to them is, I think, a guiding force for me. So we use we use Google Ads. Google Ads have served me really well in the past 5 years. In terms of being able to be set up and kind of do their job, and it's a very, very important element where people are like, I'm looking for piano lessons, and being readily available at that point in time when people need that. Social media is newer-ish to me. Like, I don't intrinsically just love being on social media, but I do love the relationship aspect, and being able to communicate a degree of our personality, and to do, actually connect with people more. I'm really hopeful to, let me put it this way. I don't love compelling ad copy, like scarcity marketing. I don't disagree with it. It's a real thing, but it's pretty rare for me to write an ad that says, like, only 3 spaces available, because it's not genuine. Even if there are, I'm like, but I will find a place for you, because
Mm.
that's what I really feel in my heart. Like, if you're ready to do this, I will move heaven and earth, and I will find a spot for you. And if I met you, that's what I would tell you. So I'm never gonna, like, try and sell you a different way, disingenuously being like, oh, but like, spots are scarce. Again, that's just because that's me. It's not a bad marketing practice. I'm just trying to talk to people like I would talk to them in real life.
Mm.
And that's why I wrote a book, because like, I want to communicate with people and let them know what I'm all about. We do a lot of community events. Again, it's a great place to actually meet people face to face. I try and do a lot of school-based outreach. I'm really trying to get back into library programming, because I have a long history. People don't know this as well too, but for years and years, I've worked with our local library and done, like, preschool music story times. I have kids that graduated high school this year, and their moms called me and like, you remember they would come to the library when they were 4? Like, I'm that I think is a perfect example, because that's the longevity piece. Like, I still run into people that I had an interaction with 15 years ago by singing, down by the bay at the library, and we created a connection. And that's, it's not how much, like, how much did you buy from me in that time, but what positive thing did we accomplish? So, to a practical standpoint, online paid ads, online social ads, organic social content, like, that's all stuff for us. Event based things, are I both where we go to events and where we host events are important to me as well too, because there's a very big community drive. I try and do as much networking as I can. I do leverage my own personality, for lack of a better term. Not everybody's going to be that way, but I mean, New Songs is me, and I am New Songs. So I show up on, like, the morning news programs, or podcasts, things like that. I also, personally, invest in that marketing one, and be the face or the representative of the school as well too, and hopefully have strong referral programs. It doesn't matter how big or small you are, if people say good things about what you do, that is powerful.
Do you have any tips for somebody who might feel a little overwhelmed just with, as they're scaling their school, and they, maybe they're opening up their first or second location, and they're starting to feel the tug of like, oh my gosh, we have all these employees and all of these or teachers and staff, and now we got all these students. You know, you can't personally know. I think you mentioned that earlier. You can't personally know every person that's coming into your every student that signs up and all of that. How do you manage that? Like, how do you do so many different things that you do and just stay sane?
I would say first and foremost, it's that whole start with why. I mean, like what we do is a little crazy. um, I'm not going to deny that, but I don't care, like I'm okay that it's a little bit crazy because I so believe that what I'm doing actually has a lifelong impact on thousands of young minds. And so, yes, does it suck when I'm like, I got to go talk to that teacher about smelling like weed when they come to work?
Hmm.
I don't like that, but I don't care because there's something bigger at play. So I think that that's is my starting block is I'm not avoiding the crazy, but it's worth it to me. Um, on beyond that, I personally try and stay very present. I am the opposite of an absentee owner. Like I'll be like, okay, I'm free this afternoon. That teacher called out sick. I'll substitute for them if nobody else is
Hmm.
available. And you know what? Which is great because then I get to pull up and say, oh, look, these are terrible lesson notes from this past month. I'm here in it, and now we get to talk about it and make this a coachable moment. Like I get in there on the lead comment cards and see how old they are, and like I'm probably annoying um, most of the time because I'm just I'm very in it. I'll walk through the halls and I'll stop by the front desk and say what why is that or what's happening there. So I think staying really present helps me see hopefully again those things that I can be proactive with instead of reactive. Like oh my gosh, I had did never saw that coming kind of thing. Okay, so what was the question? How do you manage the insanity?
Hmm.
Don't be afraid to go to Disneyland, 5 or 6 times a year because you at some point you gotta like you gotta be like I'm out, So when you're in it, be in it all the time, and then go and be like I'm going on the roller coaster, I'm sitting on the beach, I'm on the cruise ship, like um, work hard, play hard. That's how things work at my household as well too. Um, but and then when it comes to that, like that sense of priorities, um, that's a tough one. But I would say that I ran across something I read really recently that I really enjoyed about being busy because people do tell me a lot, like, "Oh, you must be so busy," and I legitimately don't feel that way most of the time. And this other book really told me why because he's like, when somebody says I'm so busy, I hear that to be I'm lacking priorities because I have all the things and I don't know what to do next. Or and I understand that because I do a lot of things, but I also thankfully feel like I am choose what I do most of the time. Like
Hmm.
I put all of these things on my plate and so it may be a lot of things, but I'm not busy. I'm just doing the things that I chose to do and I choose to do a lot of things. Other people might not like having as many things on their plate, but I do. So I don't feel busy because these are all intentionally chosen things that I want to do. But I would say that um, when there's 17 different marketing channels, I would also say look to the ones that are working and do more of the lean into what's working and do more of that or more like it before you hop into something completely different. Give stuff a chance to work itself out. Just like when we open, like a new type of class, it, the first month it feels like it's failing because there hasn't been enough time for it to gain any traction. And Google Ads could be the same thing. Like the first month it didn't like totally change. And so, there's a level of don't abandon ship too quickly before you've been able to let stuff work itself out. And then also, think about what has worked. We've always been pretty community involved. Like I've showed up at the fairs and festivals and met people and shook their hands and at the vendor tables and all that stuff. And that there's not been one event where it's like, oh, we got 700 leads from this one event, but collectively over time that's proven to be a valuable way for us to build community relationships. And we had to kind of revisit that because obviously with different sorts of COVID shutdowns, like that a lot of the event space went away for a little while, so we had to intentionally re-engage and start to go back to events or to go back to hosting events. But we've seen that work to be face-to-face relationship building with people, both to then win them over as clients or to be this referral network. And so we really try and lean into more of what is working as opposed to, you know, what some random strategy we've never tried before.
Who's somebody that has inspired you in your life? And like what was it about them that was inspiring to you?
Uh, okay, Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers inspires me 100%. I write about Mr. Rogers in my book about the neighborhood of make believe. Um, so if I could be one thing in my life, that's what I would want, because there was just such a respect for the human being as an individual, and the desire to not to give something and to not feel the need to take something back. You know, I'm very inspired by his whole approach to just being on television and saying that television is it's not evil in and of itself, but people are using this exploitatively. They're giving kids crappy content and as an excuse to give them commercials to want to sell to buy stuff. And I don't believe that children should be treated that way. So I'm going to choose to treat them with dignity and respect and with the best that I have to give and to do something different. And I think in a lot of ways that we're in this interesting era as well too. Like the internet's not evil, but a lot of people do use a lot of the online space exploitatively, especially towards children. And so being able to be kind and to famously the song says, you are special. And I just think if I could do one thing in my life and it was just to stare at people and to tell them, you know what, you are special, like right now, not because like if you become a great musician or if you do this, you could be special, but you are special right now. That is all I want to tell people in my life.
I love that. Wow. Favorite book?
Ooh, that's hard. um I consume a lot of audiobooks, so I do have a lot of favorites. I would say, I guess from a businessy perspective, so to speak, the one that I recommend the most is the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. I think that being a value-based organization and having this common language towards our values is huge for me. So, value number one is taking 100% responsibility for my part. Number four, I believe, is feeling your feelings all the way through, which is kind of an odd one to try and put into a business context, but I actually feel is pretty important. And so being able to actually like talk to my leadership and use this terminology, being committed to not gossiping. Right now, I've been talking recently about being committed to revealing instead of concealing. Not putting up a facade based on ego, but being extremely open whenever we can. And so the culture of the school is really important to me. I don't actually do this to make money. I mean, yes, I do make money at it, and like, yes, I do have to support my family and all that stuff. But if all this did was make money, I wouldn't want to do it anymore. So being very clear about like what my values are and how I want to establish those, I think is a big deal for me. I also like Ron Clark. Ron Clark has several books. He's an educator, and one of his real early ones was The Essential 55. One of his more recent one I think is called Move Your Bus. So I really like him. Like I get his teacher vibe and his like dream big mentality as well too. So um, I enjoy his stuff as well too. I like Donald Miller. I mean, his stuff has always been really, really powerful as well too. I could keep going, so I'm just going to stop because the more I think about it, the longer the list is going to get.
There's so many good books. That's why I ask
Yeah.
because I just yeah, there's always another good one to read. What what piece of advice would you give your younger self if you were to go back with knowing what you know now, going back to that young, newly married kid that's just got stars in his eyes starting this business, what piece of advice would you give your younger self?
Honestly, I think I would just tell myself it's gonna be worth it. You know, I don't know if um, I don't know if there's anything I could have avoided. And yeah, of course, there's lots of things I would have wished to have not gone through in my life, but I also am who I am today because of those things. So I don't know which ones I would choose to not have to go through, um, or what the repercussions would be. So I mean, I think I would just tell myself, like it's a long it's a long game, it's a long journey, but ultimately it is worth it. Like stick in it, and it will go somewhere.
No, that's great. That's really, really good advice. So what's next? What's next for you, for your school, for your family? What's the big thing on the horizon that you're shooting for right now?
Well, we're leaving for 4 weeks in the middle of the fall, so I'm excited about that. I'm out of here. We're doing a little bit of world traveling, so I'm excited for that. I have one that just
Wow.
graduated college this year, one that graduated high school this year, and then I've got one that's in eighth grade. So, I mean, I'm at kind of a transitional time, even with my own kids and what's next in their own lives. So, I am excited to make the most of all of that time that we have with them. Um, I I don't know about the sizes of the schools. I mean, it's always a joke about buying another school at this point because it happens so fast. And so there's no plans to buy another school, but it's like we can never say never around here. We are doing a lot of outreach as well. So in addition to the lesson space, we are working like with the public education sector quite a bit and bringing in programs where there is not a public school music teacher, and that's pretty important to me as well too, because again, that's an accessibility aspect. That I'll never be able to have all the kids have the support and resources to like come and take lessons. So if in addition to that we can show up where they are at school and create access to music, I think that that's important as well too, because I do really believe that everybody benefits and grows as a human being from music. And so any barriers that we can remove from that are important to me. I'm having fun writing. I have all kinds of like children's based books that I could see myself writing given the time and energy. So I don't know. That's a little bit of a side pivot right now. So the timing is not it where like I'm committed to writing as a creative art, but I think it'll come around at some point. And um, just being creative. We just came out with a school mascot, so we just created our gnome mascot. So I'm having way too much fun doing this. I'm working on starting a podcast for our gnome mascot, and it's crazy, it's silly, but it's fun, and I think that
Love
we
it.
should be having fun. So
That's so awesome. Well, Michael, I'm so inspired by everything that you shared, your journey. I love your perspective on this. It's so refreshing. Um, you definitely embody the joy of what music can bring into somebody's life, and you're you're sharing that with, like you said, thousands and thousands of kids in your area. And so I'm thrilled, and I'm excited to follow your journey as you continue to, whether you buy more schools or not, but just the continued passion that you have. You're truly making a difference in the world. So thank you for being on the show today, and I'm sure we'll catch each other soon.
yeah, thanks, David.